Hello. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here again. Welcome to EA Live. So today we have another live stream, and this is a good one because this stream we're going to have a panel discussion on writing content for the web. How do agencies or shouldn't write content for clients? Does content come before or after the designs are done, or should it be built at the same time? What are all those intricacies? And we have an awesome panel of people that you'll be meeting as we get started. So as always, welcome to EA Live. I am Pablo. I'm your host. When we do these, every week or every 2 weeks, some of them we do live, some are pre-recorded, and it's awesome when we do them live and we can have audience questions. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat as the conversation goes on for about 40 minutes to an hour. We'll be chatting with our panel of guests, and we'd love to have your questions throughout and kind of have that conversation be flowing not only through the panel but also with the people that are watching live. So it's a panel discussion on writing content for the web. And without further ado, I'll start bringing on everyone that we'll be chatting with today, and I will be removing myself from the stream. So welcome everyone to EA Live. Here we go, everyone coming in. You're all muted, so give me a second as I unmute you all. You can start speaking now. Let's see. Oh, you're all muted yourself, so you need to unmute yourself.
Oh, man.
It's not letting me unmute you. I was trying. There we go. Here we are. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. We got quite a crowd today. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Hey, Pablo. Thanks for getting us going here. I'm excited to have this conversation. And this is a conversation that really stemmed from like a series of tweets. I don't know like who started it. I know, Avi, you were in there and there was lots of GIFs and, and then like, Ben, you had something to say, and Vincent, and, I tagged Kendra in there, and Kendra and Michael have been going back and forth behind the scenes. And so, yeah, I just really love to kind of continue that. First, before we get going, maybe we could go around and just, everyone kind of introduce themselves, like how do they, and maybe just like a little bit around how you approach building for the web or writing for the web. So, Kendra, I'll let you go first.
I know you were going to tag me in first.
Yeah, everyone, after you say something, then just like tag.
I'll tag somebody else. Hey, so my name's Kendra Rainey, and I am the VP of Strategy and Content for Edgar Allan. And I approach writing for the web from, not just a content first perspective, but a content always perspective. And we work really collaboratively at Edgar Allan, and I will have a whole lot more to say about that as we keep talking. And I'm going to pass it along to my partner in crime, Michael Ferguson.
Thanks, Kendra. I'm Michael Ferguson. I am the SEO specialist and writer over at Edgar Allan. So that's kind of my whole gig, is the search engine optimization that I do for Edgar Allan and our clients. And I approach writing for the web from like I don't know, like it's a tricky space to be in. Sometimes when people hear SEO, they get a bit frightened and they're like, oh, you're just writing for machines. And I often find myself as marrying writing for humans and writing for search engine algorithms, which is not that much of a tough line to walk. But yeah, that's where I kind of fit into the content side of things. And I'm going to tag Uros.
I feel like I'm overpowered right now. Yeah, like we have a content strategist and SEO, and like from my side, I'm the founder and CEO of Floninja. And basically, like content has been like our, let's say, the biggest struggle we've had recently, because with time, I guess, like we started creating processes around design, development, and everything is kind of going like into a great success, I would say. But like with content, like there's a lot of different steps, and hopefully in this kind of in this live stream, I'm going to be learning a lot more about that, and also sharing our experiences in how we've handled content so far.
If it'll make you feel any better, our biggest struggle is also content, and so
always.
Yeah, you're not alone there.
Okay, yeah, a lot easier right now. Vincent, I can pass it over to you.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm
Vincent.
still muted, all right. I was hoping not. I didn't prepare. Okay, I'm in France. I'm a long-time Webflow designer. I work on the web since 2005. I mean, on websites professionally. Content has been more and more increasingly important. As much as the web matured, as much as I was being better at my work, content appeared to be king, actually. So I'm very happy we have this discussion. I'm sure we all have a lot of techniques and ideas to share. And I'm tagging search historian.
Yeah. So, hey guys, my name is Aiva, or everybody knows me around as search historian, and I'm a Webflow SEO. Now currently starting like an agency on only content and an SEO for Webflow in the first steps. And I work with content clusters and SEO, mostly when it comes to SEO, mostly not on the link side, but on the content side. That's my thing. But I also work with backlinks if needed. And yeah, and when it comes to content, my kind of job is, strategic information architecture and sitemap building and stuff like that. So, a small site for me is 100 slugs, that small content base. And I think my kind of best superpower is knowing how to produce 100 articles, not one. So that's kind of where I stand, and that's where my expertise kind of comes in. So, and I'm going to tag, I don't know who, but definitely Ben, because he's the last one.
Hey everybody, so my name is Ben Zelinsky. I'm a web designer, a Webflow geek, and a former UX designer. And for the majority of my design career, I always worked collaboratively in teams. So I had the chance to witness both the situations where there was like a strong, proper content person on the team, and also the situations where content was just like randomly written by whoever was available. So I'm super interested in the discussion today.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think maybe one of the places to start is the tweet that you had mentioned, and I don't know if Pablo can pull it up, but I guess you had put out a survey there. RV. I read like I spell, so you're gonna have to like bear with me here. And Kendra knows this.
So it's Aiva.
Aiva.
Yeah.
Aiva. Okay. And you had a really great tweet, and I guess like you had posted up like what's difficult about building for the web, and then I think a large respondents was like you say all you say is content. So the first question I'd love to cover off here is like, what would help your clients with content issues? And I don't know who wants to take this on first. Yeah, there we go. So,
I mean, like maybe I can start. I mean, from our side, like we've seen that it's mostly education, just because sometimes usually clients come to, let's say, an agency and they figure out, okay, they're gonna handle everything, but then we need to take a step back, and like sometimes we do discovery workshops, and sometimes like we need to realize, okay, we don't know enough about this topic in order to write about it. Like they're the best ones to do so, and then finding the proper process to actually work with our clients this way. So that we probably kind of work on a project, pause it for content, and then continue working when the content is finished. And then that can be kind of pretty tricky sometimes to actually explain the whole process, and that the website is going to take, instead of, let's say, like 2 months, it's maybe going to take a lot more, just because like all of that content needs to be produced by somebody who knows actually the area, I guess.
Awesome. And how's that been working?
Yeah, I mean, like so far it's great up to a point. I would say like when we do like websites up to 20 pages, something like that, it can work like on that process. And then like when a website is maybe like a little bit bigger than that, we usually work in sprints. So that sometimes like we just release kind of hunchads.com, and for them, like they didn't realize that the content is gonna be like the problem, and like it's our fault that we probably didn't flag that on time, like that we're not getting enough content, and like the project kind of was getting a little bit longer than expected. So we decided in the end, okay, let's launch an MVP version of the website, which is gonna cover all of the old links that the website had, so we don't gonna basically do any SEO harm. And then like everything new we created, let's do 2-week sprints. Like they're gonna have somebody dedicated on their side to start writing content in sprints. And then like after 2 weeks, we're gonna be launching, let's say, the industry pages, after 2 weeks, we're going to be launching a new set of pages that we plan to kind of be like more and more content oriented and SEO oriented. So like this was the only way to kind of remove like the mess of a big project around the whole project and like be focused just on the next thing that comes. Like the next thing is going to be industry pages. Let's focus on that for the next 2 weeks to a month, launch those, and then like just have another next thing to focus on instead of focusing on a whole website. And then it's like, this is 30% done, this is 60% done. Like we can never get over the hunch to actually finish everything kind of completely.
Makes sense. So kind of starting off with an initial sort of strategy and then incrementally working against that, which I think
and then additionally, like we've introduced kind of ongoing collaborations with our clients, so that we started mostly looking at the website as, okay, this is the first baby step is actually launching the website, and then afterwards you can work with our team long term to go ahead and like work on analytics, conversion rate optimizations, and to constantly month by month publish new things. Because I feel like as more and more companies are getting online, that's the only way to kind of look at a website. And like even our agency website gets updates every 2 weeks, like that maybe people don't take a look at. But if we can like make maybe a smaller project initially and then create a long-term collaboration, like in a year span of time, we're going to be like 10 times better than if we had just a single big project. So like that's been also a huge success for our agency in general.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to just go around here. Vincent, how are you working with things, and what are your thoughts here?
You also already said the main principle, but we can repeat them because it's a prerequisite of this discussion. The principle we have to agree on is like we need static and CMS content to do a good job, whether we're a designer or just a builder. If we don't have this, it means we're going to spend more time designing and build things. We're going to go back to it, and it's going to deprive us of the chance of making better iterations and have a better result. So no content to begin with is not good for the quality of the design itself. So in order, and we have to pass that message to the client. So this is what Euros called education. And I mean, if we're designers or builders, we want to do the less possible education as possible, because most likely that's not what we've sold. And content agency, branding content agency, they charge more per day than build or design. So it's just unfair. But you have to admit that it's all our fault. If a client comes to us as freelance or small agencies, agile groups, they're going to ask us for a website, and we have to communicate everything about it. That content is key. Who has to write the content? That we have to quote for our time, but we have to quote for the time of our clients. Like this is the time you're going to have to spend on content, and if you don't, this is the money you're going to have to spend for a content agency to write the content. Most clients, small and medium, have no clue about that. So in the end, we can't complain. It's just our job. So if we want to do as less education as possible, we have to be very, very prepared. We have to know how to pass this message, and we have to build tools actually. And if I can share my screen very briefly, I don't know if it works.
Sure. I think you can.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You have to authorize something.
Structure. Yes, it should. Okay. This is, can you see my screen? So
there we go. Yeah.
All right. This is a very basic Webflow website. I used Webflow pre-made sections, and this is like for Acme, and this is just explaining the topic, and all the sections are the minimum section you should have when you have no clue about the content you need on your website. So it's a hero, social proof, benefits, use cases, how it works, and CTA. And by typing the interrogation point key, you can have section by section little helpers, and those helpers you can click them and have further documentation. But this is actually the minimum we can do for our clients. I can share this website. It's not complete at the moment. It's my 2023 version, but it proves itself very very effective. And if I can finish by one technique I've been using over the years that is very effective, both to put the client in the shoes of you're going to have to create the content now and by this date, and also a great way to kickstart a project. whether it's a CMS project or a landing page type project. You should have like a very long, like half a day kickoff meeting with your client, sharing your screen, everybody on this computer, and you kickstart the Webflow project. You create a project, and you start creating the content model, because it's very easy to teach the client how to build the content model. They're gonna say what they need in terms of CMS content. You're gonna add some because they didn't foresee everything. We're gonna create all the fields together, and you're gonna create fake content. And you leave this meeting with the client having a website, CMS content structure defined, most section defined, and they have to fill in the blanks and to add content to the CMS. I think it's necessary if I don't want to lose so many times, because the client can start working on the project right away. You have to ask them about it the next day and the day after, so that they don't forget. And it proves to be very, very effective. I'll be happy to share more about this for who wants to.
Yeah, I'd love to see that kind of asset and how you're, again, just trying to frame up for them so that it's not like a total blank page. And I think the example you showed with the Acme company, which I think has been around forever. I remember as a kid hearing about Acme. I'm just teasing.
Yeah, this is I get that from the
from Bugs Bunny.
I never knew it's like why Acme. What does it mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And so we have a question here. I'd love to have content first before starting the design, but in reality, it hardly ever happens. I'm curious, like, Ben or like who's experienced this, or like how is the group approaching this?
I think I can take this one for a second. So I think it rarely ever happens because we are doing it to ourselves. So I'm in complete agreement with what Vincent said regarding like our role as freelancers or agencies in facilitating the process, because I think like, first of all, we have to remember that if we have a client who just doesn't have the budget, or they don't realize that the budget is needed for bringing in somebody experienced with writing content for the web, then ultimately we can run into a situation where we as web designers, we're not really content writers. Our clients are not content writers as well. We need a certain level of empathy and preparation for that. And I think it's nice to like shift your mind from being a bit like resentful sometimes that, oh, it's hard to get the content from them, and then just like sharing these as horror stories, and then like try to think more in terms of how can I facilitate the process of getting the content and for which types of my client. Because again, depending on your skill set, you can be the person providing the content, and it can be a full-blown strategy phase that will last a few weeks, or you can outsource this part, or you can just like align and just like narrow down the scope of what you're offering to the clients if you're working with small to mid-sized clients. But at the end of the day, as clients, they needed to have clarity on the process and clarity on the steps, and some proper deadlines and ways of bringing this content. So I think what's often the problem is that the content is just, the process around getting content is not defined enough. And then we are getting into these frictions between clients and freelancers because we don't really have a clear process on it, or we don't communicate it clearly. The client also kind of doesn't know because they're not content writers, and we live in this sort of weird middle ground. Yeah. So
I'm curious, and Kendra, I'm going to put you on the spot in here in a little bit, but maybe Kendra, if you've got a second, grab the mural board, and I'd love to be able to ask Ben a follow-up question while you're doing that. I know you're kind of like Kendra, you're like, just like the workshop we go through.
Oh,
Sorry.
a content workshop.
A content workshop that we go through.
Yeah, I can find out.
Just so that you can. I'm gonna ask you to talk through that. Ben, I'd love to know, are there any tools that you use specifically when you're kicking off a project to help, get that content, or that you're working with a client? Is there anyone specifically that you work with to try to like get them unstuck?
I think I would just like leverage FigJam mostly. Okay. But I think at the end of the day, tool is just a tool.
Yeah.
So whatever works for you.
Yeah. It's funny. So we've been in the Webflow, like EA's been in the Webflow space for a while. Webflow for a long time was actually a loss leader for us. So it was like not where we made money. We made money on more of like the design and content. And then we just talked a lot about Webflow. And I think even now Webflow accounts for maybe 15 to 20% of our total project. And then a lot more of that is around like the content and like content design, UI design, and something that I often see is people come thinking they need a Webflow site, and then what they really need is like, some type of content definition, like maybe a tune-up around the brand, visual tune-up, and then by the time we get to the build, we're like, oh, now, not that this is the easy part, but that's the part that's now defined, and we can have a little bit more leverage as we're like, presenting ourselves or be able to differentiate there. So, let's see. Aiva, did I get that right? Am I close? All right. Just like, I'm going to murder it like the whole time.
Don't worry. Everybody murders it. That's the reason why I don't have a name, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel weird calling you search historian, but I really love that. So maybe I'll go there.
Keep that. I think it's easier.
And, but I'd love to know. I mean, like you're going in, and you've worked in Webflow for a while, and now you're going in with this kind of content perspective, which I think is really needed. And obviously, like, sounds like some people can partner with you. What are the tools that you're using to help clients get unlocked?
So before, I'm going to just reply to a few things that people said, and then I'm going to try to remember that question just in case I forget it. But one thing, first of all, a shout out to Marcelo. He actually came out with that post, not me. I just read it. Yeah. And then everybody said the same word. Then I just retweeted it with a, hey, wait, can we continue on actual problem, which is content? Because Marcelo just from Friends Agency just said, what is the most common cause of delays in Webflow projects? And everybody said the same, which was awesome to read actually from my side. So then the other question, I think Vincent was mentioned, who has to write the content? And this is, I think, for us, it's important to understand that there's multiple answers to this question. There's no right or wrong answer here, right? If you have the budget and you can afford actual, and also what kind of content? Like, is it SEO, more SEO on the SEO side or more on copywriting? Because copywriting is more of a for conversion and SEO is more of a for attraction. You know how it goes. So, but also maybe it's a small mom and pop shop, and you're still charging them 10 grand for a site because it's a new cover up or something, but they don't have like a team for it and or budget for a monthly marketing budget. And it would be normal from their side because it's a small business, right? So that's a question that I don't know the answer for. And I think nobody here knows. That's the magic. Like, who should write the content? Nobody knows. But there are better and worse ways, and the most they can afford, the most time or money they can spend, that's the way you should do it. And then back to your question. So I'm one of those weird people because I try to get into projects very early on. I start with content inventory before anything. There's no site, there's no idea, no wireframe, not just content inventory. Because it's a long process of research. It's a long process of understanding the team. It's a long process of understanding the product or service or e-commerce brand or whatever it would be. You start, and that's a long investment for somebody who would be called like a content manager or a SEO manager or a SEO team or something. So that's why there's no short-term contracts when I try to work with people. It's because it takes time to get into there and can take from a few weeks to a few months, depending on what it is. And content inventory sounds like something that is just at the later phase, like, 2 years later, there's going to be an SEO coming in and they're going to do an audit and it's going to be content inventory, but actually start from the other side, because that's going to dictate content that needs to be written before wireframing.
That's really interesting. I think we take a similar approach.
And then I go to the sitemap, and then I build the sitemap according to SEO rules. So basically, I build 3 things at the same time. There's a sitemap, and when we're talking sitemap, I know like all 200 or something URLs that will be there at the end. I can subdivide it into parts, as in, okay, we're going to build this cluster, as in these 3 CMS collections first, then next one, the next one. So somebody mentioned modular approach, right? We start from the minimum valuable, but they're going to grow from there. And then the other thing I do is, so sitemap, content inventory, and then with that, while doing on that, I also have an internal linking strategy for that, because that dictates content, links, because, average page in this case has like from 40 to 50 to 100 links on the page, if we exclude navbar and footer, especially homepage. Homepage for sure has it. So that's like the insane hard work. So that's why I build content inventories, usually like on ClickUp, but it can be Notion. And you have a sitemap, each URL, each place, and you can communicate now and later with the client, with the team about the precise slug, precise URL, imprecise card, imprecise thing before you even start wireframing the site. So my opinion, that's ideal. But I also know that reality is different, because there's so many factors. Clients come in all shapes and sizes and budgets, and that's what I think should be the right way.
It's very rare, like you have what I'd say is like a pure clean room, right, where it's like always the ideal process. Also, I saw Marcelo is in the comments, and Pablo, if you've got the link, maybe you could shoot it over to him. I don't know if he just might be kind of like spitzing around, like, drinking his coffee, but if he wants to join, I did not actually see that's where this had originated from, but I'd love to have him join us. So I feel bad about that. I was just, things fly by on Twitter, and I jump in and start commenting.
We're having a party without him.
Yeah, I know. So I feel so bad.
It's his party.
Yeah,
right? I'll try to get him in here in a minute or so. And while we do that, there's a couple of questions in the chat. I want to make sure we're not continuing before
Pablo, I love how you just we got popped in here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm controlling the whole thing. So we got a question from Berno. I think kind of related to what you were talking about, Aiva, and then another one from Isabel. So let's go with Berno's question first. So if the client doesn't want to pay extra for the content writer and insists on doing it themselves, how do you facilitate getting the content from them?
Guidelines and templates.
Maybe I can take like one of that, because sometimes we work with clients that write content on their own. So usually it's more of as Vincent said, a delegation, you need to delegate things in the best way possible. But if I can share my screen right now here, I can. Entire screen. Nice.
You can.
Nice. So there we go. Usually we use Octopus, and we use a discovery workshop. So first, we start with a discovery workshop to see the product demo, we interview them, we go through the customer journey that they have currently, how it should be better, what are the goals, expectations for the projects, potential roadblocks. This one has been a huge one for us, because when clients are creating copy, you can ask them, are you going on a vacation in the next 2 weeks or so, if you want this project to be done or whatever. We've had those happen. We've had one of our clients actually had an eye surgery, so we had to stop project for a month because they couldn't continue writing the copy. And that's life comes in, you should just figure out, okay, if the project is 3-6 months, what do we predict that can maybe stop us in that period of time? And also from our side, maybe somebody's going on a vacation. And then based on that, with them, we usually create an Octopus sitemap that can be sometimes pretty big, with every single section going to a different page, et cetera, et cetera. And when we have the homepage, for example, we can have sections which we want to have, and then in each section, the client can write copy for every single one of the sections. And Octopus is pretty great, because I found FigJam and Figma sometimes take a lot more time because you need to move things around and whatever. But Octopus is pretty limited to things you can actually do inside of it. So you can use color blocks, what is CMS, what is not CMS, and basically just outline everything. And then we create a timeline for clients and timeline for us. So it might be over the next 2 weeks, you're going to be starting to write copy for the homepage. When the copy for the homepage is done, we start designing. And maybe we use those 2 weeks for art direction or something like that to basically align on the kind of art direction for the website in general, so that we don't have to like lose time. And then like we can also have a timeline for us and for them. And if they're maybe behind on the content, we can, okay, it's because of the clients, and we can always say, okay, the project is going to be late for like a month or so because we're late from the content from your side. Or like it happens that also we make mistakes, like we can, okay, maybe you got a content on time, but we didn't act on it quickly enough and whatever. But having responsibilities for clients and for us can be the key. But it also, like, it's again not the ideal process. Like it happens that deadlines are missed, or like we don't notice that the client didn't provide a copy on time, then we forget to tell them, then like it becomes a haste period, like where you don't know who's guilty of the project being late. So it's again like something we've came up like over the past few years, like that, and how we use it, but still not the ideal one, I guess.
I love the octopus
Awesome.
tool. I haven't checked that out. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be cracking that open.
Nice.
And I guess
I could help. Yeah, right.
There's a similar question if someone else wants to take it on that Corey just asked, coming late to the stream. But what happens, like just a product gets paused, the client delays a down payment, or you also pause project if the client delays providing the content?
Ooh, this is like a whole other like contract
wow.
conversation, which I'm happy to have.
Boom.
Yeah, and great.
We need
great
a
question,
lawyer
Corey.
for that.
Yeah, but I'd love to see if anyone else has an answer or approach that they're using.
So far, we've been pausing projects on our side, like not lawyers or whatever, but it's usually because it becomes pretty expensive, because you have a developer or like a designer who's usually dedicated full time, but they don't have full time work. So usually just eats away your budget, like it eats away your payroll and everything like that as an agency. So we found that the clients are usually okay with it if we say, let's pause for a month and let's continue next month. And then sometimes they're like 1 week before the pausing, like let's pause for another month. But it became like a much easier process. Like we actually have a project that's gonna launch next week, which was paused in November, like because we handed off the whole website and then they're creating content, and like when they create the content, we continue working. It's just like important for us that we close the project completely, that you're not like fixing bug here and there, because then it can also gonna distract you from doing other work. But it's been so far it's been pretty great for us, I guess.
I have a special guest to join the stream, and I'm gonna leave so it's an even amount of people here. So I'll leave you with the one.
Hey, Marcelo, how are you? Good to see you.
Hello.
Hey, Mason. Hey, team. How's it going, everybody?
Great.
Awesome.
You're the instigator here, and then
And you're right. I'm with my coffee.
Yeah. Just so thanks for joining. I would love to hear if you've got any comments or questions from what you've heard so far.
Yeah, I was actually listening to all the different techniques, and I think that what I distilled, and hopefully this becomes kind of like a little summarization for anyone that just joins, right? I heard that's a lot about collaboration with the client, where what we want to do is involve them as soon as possible in the process. What we've seen specifically for us during that, we had amazing clients that, as everybody expects, come with everything that it has to do with the content already formatted, and here's even in programs that I'm trying to remember names and I don't, but they come in and then it's just like plug and play and that's it, and that of course is bliss. But we've seen a lot of scenarios where, from training them at the very beginning, that I think you, Mason, were talking about, I'm gonna begin to do that one. We haven't trained the client like on day one on how to write their own content in Webflow. But for us, we've been leveraging, as Search Historian was saying, is like we're leveraging Figma, we're leveraging Notion, Google Doc, whatever it helps us to get content as soon as possible and minimize the amount of content impact that changes, like at the amount of words or structure of a paragraph closer to the end of the project when we are developing in Webflow.
Awesome. Kendra, I don't know if you've got your mural board spun up, but this might be a good segue as we're talking about collaborating with clients. So I'd love to hear from you on how, you start to set up a client engagement. And, half the time it's not even just getting the content. Sometimes it's just getting people to agree on the content. Like, and having the two people in the room would be like, well, that's not how I sell things. Well, that's how I sell things, and like they're
Right.
trying to reflect stuff out into the market. So Kendra, I'd love for you to talk through that process.
Yeah. Before I share that, I want to say that, search historian Aiva, I totally agree with your perspective. I was super refreshing to hear somebody say start with the content audit, because that is our one kind of most pivotal document that we, especially if we're, if there's ever a client that we have that literally does not have a web presence and we're starting from scratch, this is sort of a different animal. We have one of those coming up soon.
And I say still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can actually make some guesses.
Zero means still starting the same spot. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I can show you like real quick how that looks on my side, because they're live sharing screen.
Yeah, let's do
I actually showed Uros, I think this the other day. We were chatting with him, and I made like the quickest distilled GIF I can of how I work. So you make clusters anatomy, then you make each one of these lines as a CMS, and then you make like a proof of the sitemap, even though you just mimic like 30%, and then you make all of this into a workable sheet. So, and then client sees it, maybe they say, hey, I don't like this feature. We don't have this feature. Or they say the opposite, like we don't provide the service, or because for them, it's even hard to understand what they actually do in life. Like it's really hard to, clients thinks they know their business, but usually when you start talking, they realize I have no idea how this structured, and then you of course have linking strategy. This is like an example of 4 CMS cluster that we're doing that showcases features. But so you start with these 3 elements, and this kind of distills it to at least the way I see this process to basics, even if you don't have a site before that,
Absolutely. Yeah, and we do very detailed content audits. Basically, create the spreadsheet that is, what are we going to edit? What are we going to remove? What are we going to move, migrate, delete, archive? And we try to use that document from the very first moment of an engagement. And it just becomes a living document. It moves all the way to the end. And eventually, depending on how complex the site is, we tend to show copy in layout most often, just because it in Figma, in design, or very least in wireframes. It's because it's just easier for clients to understand, for everyone to understand sort of how the story of a page or the story of a site goes. But sometimes that content audit will morph into a detailed content matrix later in the project that we're filling in blanks. We're helping clients understand how what they should be writing and where it should be going. But we take in terms of just starting off, for one, every project is a content project. That is the way that we approach every single project. There is never a situation in which there's going to be a website created that doesn't have a single word on it. I would say I won't say never. Most web pages, most websites are 50% words, right? So starting there and with that mindset is just key. And then we take a little bit more of what I would say, Aiva, your approach is kind of granular, almost bottom up. We're looking at a top down approach a lot of times, because my experience or my background is in brand strategy. So we will start a lot of times with the bigger idea. And I'm going to share my screen and show, how do I do that? There we go. Kind of what that looks like. So the very first thing that we always do with any project is get our client SMEs together. A good cross section is always nice. Someone from the C-level all the way down to people who are customer success or customer service, people that are on the ground with clients themselves. And we get them all in a room and we do a little workshop. This is an example. This one, I thought it was a blank, but it's actually filled out with a client, a little bit of client information, nothing proprietary. It's just like the start of one. So we have a kind of a flow that we move through to start to get them in the mindset of thinking, as you said, about their company objectively. They're so close to it. They often, again, they don't know exactly how they sell what they sell. They don't know how to describe it. If you look at their current web presence, you may think they don't even know how to organize telling anybody what they do, because it's usually pretty bad. But we'll start with this. This company had a previous rebrand we needed to talk about, but we also start with a typical like why, how, what, that kind of those concentric circles that get at the heart of what a company actually does, starting with, what do you do? How do you do it differently and why? And some of this stuff is sort of holdover from doing really in-depth brand sprints. But we want to start here at this like heart of the company, at the DNA. We talk about where are you today and where are you headed? Like, what is the site going to have to do in 5 years, in 2 years, in 1 year? Is it going to be gone? Are you going to be gone? Are you selling the company? What kind of longevity are we talking about? We talk about their values. This one, they had some values that they came to the table with, and we wanted to get in the sense of like, what do they believe in? What's important to them? And then we start to talk a little bit about tone. This is a card sort exercise that we do with them to talk to them about like, what do they sound like? How do they behave in the world? And we let them do sort of a is not, and I'm not sure if I'm this, and they'll talk about that and do about 5 or 6 minutes where everybody kind of shuffles their Post-its notes around and talks about those things. And then it gives us a good sense of, when we're creating copy for them, or if we're asking them to create copy for the entire site, what's the benchmark that we can work against in terms of how it should sound and behave. We talk about voice. We go very pretty in-depth on audience. I say that, it's not just content first, it's content always. It's also always audience always. You want to really have a good sense of who you're writing for and what their goals are and what and this one doesn't have it. We'll often do jobs to be done on a site. Actually, it's at the bottom of these. So we talk about the audience, like who are they, sort of, generally a little bit more than just demographically, like, what are they, what are their pain points? What are their frustrations? What motivates them? What are they trying to achieve? What are some sensitivities that they have? And then with regard to their job on the website, what are they trying to accomplish? Do you want them to buy something? Are they looking for an answer? Are they just looking for information? Are they just looking to vet who you are as a company and say that you're legit? Then we'll talk about the current site, if there is one. We'll talk about, what do we have that's good? What could block us? Just getting that out in the first, seriously, the first 10 minutes, people will say, we've got a CEO that's never going to let you get one word of copy past him. Then we know what we're dealing with, right? Or we have no one to help us write this. So then we know that we're going to have to engage in a different way. What are we missing? These are kind of like my favorite question to ask in a content discovery. What's the single most important goal of this site? Like, if you had to boil it down to one thing, what do you got to achieve here? We want to be the most well-known X in the world. We have to sell 10,000 widgets. We need to make sure people know this one thing. And then I often will just basically lay out the site as it is, and we'll talk through what's working, what's not working. I just basically make it in Post-it notes, and we move things around. We talk about, external links. This is a good place for our UX folks, and our content designers are also in the meeting at this point, and they're watching. They're asking questions. They're saying, I see that there are 3 links to external portals. What are those about? Or are you happy with your job search, software? Or, what do you want to change here? So they're getting technical information at the same time that we're getting kind of information on the buckets of content that may exist. And then Michael will talk a little bit about SEO, goals, competitors, Google Analytics. We'll get a baseline so he can start doing his work to make sure that we are first doing no harm, and B, creating a better search experience and SEO experience for the new site. And then sometimes we'll talk about design. This is a site for a venture capital firm that we've been working on. But in this workshop, I gave the designers a little bit of time to ask some, questions about how to get them started. But beyond that kind of initial workshop, we do a bunch of stuff. Like I wanted to say that, even if you don't have a lot of time to extract or to just sort of say, client, write me something, a couple of really quick, 15, 20 minute one-on-one interviews with really good questions can get you really far. Knowing what your site is going to, what the buckets of content are going to be on the site, what are the main kind of things that are missing because you've done that content audit, and then getting in front of 2 or 3 key people, just 5 questions. And you can get a lot accomplished there and start roughing things in. We also don't use lorem ipsum ever anymore. I hated it from a million years ago. There's such a lost opportunity to create meaning in a wireframe situation or in a design comp. So we moved to doing something that's more like notional copy. And honestly, I think that that's evolved for us. And we do sort of a rough draft now in wires to get the client to understand, hey, look, there's a lot missing here. We need to talk about this. Or there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of interlinking going on. We need to know where these things go. We can show them very visually what's going on. And then, creating that site matrix. And we also do a thing somewhere in the middle called a site outline, where it's kind of the step before information architecture or sort of alongside it. We'll create a site map, but we'll also create sort of a story flow. Like, from the homepage to this other main section, what do these sections sort of mean to the ultimate goal of the site? How are they contributing to the overall user experience, to the goals that those users are trying to achieve? And we create a little kind of like, just like a term paper outline to say, like, how is this thing going to work and what are the main kind of themes that we're going to have to account for. And that's sort of a step even before we get to sitemap a lot of times. And then we go one level deeper, obviously, and you're creating high fidelity wireframes and thinking very granularly about like what's going on in this spot. What is the expectation the client or the audience is having there? Do they need bullet points? Do they need to be directed? Do they need a map? Do they need a paragraph? And then kind of moving on down the page through the pages. So that was a lot of stuff. And once I get started talking, I tend to not like stop. So that's, but hopefully that was helpful. I will stop.
Yeah, I think, one, I'd love to have a follow-up conversation around a lot of these different sections that people have talked about. I feel like I've been able to, it's like we share so much, we share templates, we share JavaScript snippets, we share all this stuff, but a lot of the things that don't get shared is like, well, the thing that we're going to put in all of this, like, how are we getting there? And I've already seen like a couple different tools where I'm like, oh, and like search historian, when you're going in, I'm going to play this back and then slow it down to like 1/10 the speed so I can actually like see more of that. But I'd love to dig in.
Or you can just schedule a meeting with me and just.
Well, I'll do that too. I really, one, also thanks for anyone that has woken up early and jumped on this stream. Maybe we can have like the content club here. Anyone that's interested in talking about this stuff in more detail. Kendra, I'd love to get like the 5 questions that, so if we're, and sometimes we're able to go from like this kind of like strategy to build, and it's a group, they're maybe a little bit more established, they're maybe like series A, series B, and then sometimes we don't have that luxury. And so like, and sometimes we're doing like a more of like it's almost surgical, like what we're trying to accomplish with a client. And so just like, okay, well, let's get a story out there and how to help, people that are just like, you don't have a writer that you're working with, but, or you're trying to, kind of like coach that group along. And yeah, I'm just really sort of like interested in what people's reactions are to kind of what Kendra was saying and kind of any additional thoughts as we're, and also Michael, I think there's a whole other conversation that I want to get into around like how to approach search at the beginning. And yeah, so just kind of like,
yeah, I'd love to have those conversations, and I'd love to pick Aiva's brain as well, because I've always been an advocate of doing it from the very beginning. And having SEO involved from the very beginning and empowering the client and educating them with like, what do you want to be ranking for? Here's what you're currently ranking for.
And also, I'm glad here, explaining to them how much it costs to rank for it. Because sometimes I want to rank for that. You know how many links it's going to be? Oh, it's going to be like 10 grand, man.
Yeah, like, because that's also the thing. Like, are you interested in doing like link building? Is that something that's even getting discussed? Because Google doesn't like it that much, but and then at the same time, it can also cost you a lot of money in resources to create the kind of content and interlinking that will get you ranking for that keyword. So there's lots I'd love to talk about.
Questions for what Kendra was mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, like, I love the whole process, like, because we don't come from a branding background, like, we're not doing branding, like, because we have workshops, but it's so fun to see, like, additional brand questions, like, we didn't ask. So I think we're gonna do the same thing, like that Mason was saying, on like slowing everything down and seeing like all of the additional brand questions, because it can help you out with the content that much more on the overall process.
Yeah, I think I think there's an opportunity here to have kind of like a debrief, right? So like, again, getting into like a more surgical approach here, Urs, what you're doing, search historian, like I'm going to play that at about 1/10 the speed. And, for Vincent, like, some of the approaches that you were talking about with like your template that you've been putting together for that really great company, Acme, that I remember from my childhood. And yeah, so I don't know if we've got questions here from the chat. I'm not in the chat. So how would you guys deal with a client that hires a copywriter that isn't very good or experienced? What would you overlook, or what would you overlook or speak up? Oh, good question. Like how to work as a blended team. Yeah, so Vincent, go for it.
Just before reading this question, I wanted to say that like very often or quite some time you have the responsibility to tell to your client that they are not they are not capable of creating the content they need to satisfy their objectives. This is just the blatant truth. As how you deal with a copywriter that is just not good, I don't know. The guy is just not good. I hope they didn't lose too much money, but it just emphasizes your responsibility also to accompany your client to find good third parties thing. Like I recently made search historian hired by a friend of mine, but I asked my community to I have the community to vet, to find someone that is good, and that takes time and that takes responsibility. I did that on Twitter, I did that on LinkedIn. Great result, met a lot of people. It's months ago, and I still have like a stream of incoming people coming from that particular job. So I don't know how you deal. To answer the question, I really don't know how you deal with that. But you have to know that it will happen to make it not happen. To convince your client that they need to, and even if they have to cut the budget for the website. They don't need a team page most of the time. They don't need all the thing. They need the blog they're never going to fill. Okay. Make them spend a first batch on the homepage, even if you get less of it, but you're going to get more content. You're going to meet new third-party people, everything. The experience all over is going to be great. But you can't lie to yourself or your clients. Everybody's, I've been saying that. Great thing from everybody, from Kendra, from Euros.
Well, what I was going to say was I hope that if you're finding out that their copywriter is bad quality, that you're not surprised by it toward the end of a project. You should be, approaching that hurdle, hopefully as soon as humanly possible, so you can start, again, helping them either find someone else or, as you said, that was actually a really good point, Vincent, that, a lot of clients don't necessarily need all the fluff that they think they need. And you can dial them back to key pages and just do 3 things really, really well. And then we can move on from there. So that cuts budget, that cuts their, their responsibility. And maybe we can help them focus on that, those 3 really great pages instead of 10, 15, 20, 100 pages of crap. Because nobody wants more crap on the internet. God, I do not. So
Sludge.
Let's make a contest of who designed the less number of team pages this year.
Yeah, and I am like, I'm all like my entire
I really
thing is
want to
copy.
win.
I don't want.
I'm on. So
you are on, man. And and like removing about pages that are superfluous. Like, if you're not a mission-driven company, nobody needs to see your mission. It's plastered on your about page. Like, it's things like that.
If you're selling something, a product or a service, and you need an about page, why isn't that the answer to those questions?
It should be obvious what you're about. Yeah, exactly. If you have to say it, you're not doing a good job otherwise.
About what? And please, people, like, make your clients say where they are. This is something that is missing on most websites. You're looking at a great agency, great product, and you're looking, and you go in the footer, you go in the about page, you go everywhere. What is the country they're in? What's the city? Okay, it's USA, but what's the city? Everything is important. It's a little small granularity that is going to I don't know how to say it, to shape the idea of the business or the service in their client's mind, customer's mind. So, yep.
There's a rule of EAT's SEO, have actual business and mention it that you have it. So yeah, but yeah, by the way, Vincent, yeah, I got it. Thank you. Then continuing, the thing was, I noticed here is, and I spaced out. So
Right.
sorry guys, had an idea, but because I wanted to mention 3 things, I stopped here. My bad.
That's all right. Marcel, I'm curious, you're really the instigator to a lot of this. Are there any other thoughts you have just from, listening into the conversation?
Yeah, and especially I want to give a shout out because this little tidbit comes from doing a workshop with Lauren Harris that she just joined us as an intern during one of our projects, and information architecture. Right, I saw Kendra and the rest of the team, people showing like how to structure the pages and having the clients come back and say, hey, this is not a service that we do. This is not something that we have. And in reality, that's, in my opinion, it's either maybe more important if you have a crappy copywriter, but knowing exactly how you want to structure the story comes from answering those key questions that Kendra was showing, is like, where does this website stand in your client acquisition funnel? Is this you're just going to blast your website and people need to find out what you do, or you're going to be engaging in conversations and then it's like, hey, you want to purchase something, now here's my website. Like, there's a lot of nuances into changing and adjusting those details. So when we look into the architecture of how we do it, we'll end up seeing like what is an internal page, what's an external page, especially during information architecture. And as Vincent was saying, right, it's like we don't need more pages, it's more copies, more content. We just need to focus on having diverse information. And if you have an about page, I agree with you, Vincent, right? You need to be a mission driven. If not, it needs to be part of something bigger and something more precise that brings value to the user. So Lauren, what pointed out was like, hey, we can actually color code part of our information architecture outside of what we're doing for the type of content, and actually tell the client that, look, this is a deep link into your own website. There's an outlink. This is an anchor link. And that way you can actually see how your storytelling is going to flow, how from the top you take them to call to actions, to pop-ups, to information, and you can explain to the client how that actually pans out in your copywriting down the line.
Yeah.
And Aiva and all the SEO people are going to say like, what did you do with the about page? We need an about page for SEO.
No, it can be there. It just needs to be helpful.
Yeah, and also I remember what I forgot, and it follows on both Vincent and Marcel. It's blog is an SEO is something that typical client still thinks, but in Webflow, every CMS is a blog. Therefore, every CMS is optimized for a specific search intent. So we have to remove this notion of like coming from WordPress where everything was a post, a category, or a tag. Doesn't matter how it's structured, even if it's products and e-commerce, but still, and we throw it to the bin. And that's the hard part about SEO and Webflow, is realizing that, and then after we realize that, how to structure it and how to make less mistakes. As Michael kind of mentioned, as like, how not to make harm, but also at the same time, how to structure those pages. So not that they only look cool, but they're usable, but also they're good for crawlers, because, crawlers don't know how to read. They just skim through code, and you have to be aware of that, so yeah.
So 3 topics that I'd love to explore more that we've talked about. One is scoping with content. So that was just talked about. That's something that actually we do as well. So I run an audit with Screaming Frog, great tool, horrible name. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing around like just getting to the why there, Marcel. And then another thing I'd love to talk about is Kendra, like for you, starting with the why and getting with a client, starting to kind of coach them through that process. Everyone's asking for the FigJam board, and it's great. It's a really great FigJam board. It's kind of like it's like having a Webflow template without understanding the classes. So I think getting you to unpack that for everyone, and maybe even doing like we're getting ready to do some work even from the EA side, where we're just kind of like re-solidifying some things that we talk about. And so maybe we do a live demo of that. Also, I know that you've prepped a course around content design, Kendra, that we're going to be releasing. And then the other is just around search. So like, you know, SEO in Webflow, how to approach that. And I think Michael, you and Search Historian could probably just like really get us going here with, you know, it's like, what are the misconceptions? Like how people need to think differently coming from WordPress into Webflow, and then how to make sure that, like, you know, as you were saying, like we're not doing any harm within the design, as well as we're doing the best we can within Webflow. So I hope I've kind of captured everything. We're right on time. And yeah, but I've just really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for everyone kind of like jumping in, which started with a Twitter thread and talking about just like, you know, how to help clients, how to get projects unstuck. As I was saying, like, you know, no code projects often stall not because of no code, but because of no content. And if we can all get better at that, then we'll be able to deliver a better experience, and then hopefully have less pauses and that type of thing. So any other kind of closing thoughts? Otherwise, we'll head on out. No? Awesome. All right. Well, Pablo, take us out. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining, and talk to you later.